Well, just because 13 is an unlucky number. Like, did you know airplanes don't have a 13th row on them because it's considered bad luck?
I did not know that.
Well, now you do.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Magus Brothers podcast. I am Tyler, and with me always is the wonderful...
Hey, y'all, I'm Feyerbrand, and thank you for joining us in episode 13, the unlucky 13. But I have a feeling this episode is still going to be lucky. I don't know where I was going with that. I lost it right in the middle of whatever joke I was trying to make. Final Fantasy 13, good game. Come at me. Let's debate. Twitter, you guys know it. Let's go. Anyways, we've got, this was a pretty good couple of weeks for Final Fantasy, and, you know, we're back. Like the last 2 months of recording have been interviews, and now it's just the two of us, and it kind of feels lonely in here, but at least we got all sorts of good, juicy Final Fantasy tidbits to talk about today to keep us company.
Yeah, on one hand, it does feel kind of, it's like, oh, like there's an emptiness because we've had either two or one additional person here, but now it's just you and I, even though it's been just you and I far more than we've had interviews. But on the other hand, yeah, let's cuddle and rub beards.
Let's braid them together.
Yes. But on the other hand, like I was just joking with you the other day where it's like when we sit down and record, like it's going to be tight because one, we've got a lot of juicy 14 news that has kind of come out since we last recorded, and you and I have went to talk about it here and there a couple of times, but it's like we have a busy life, and every time we get like 5 minutes into the call, something happens and we don't get to finish it. So it's like we're finally going to get to sit down and really discuss these things.
Yeah, this will kind of be like the first episode where we really haven't discussed too much prior. Like this will kind of be our first conversation for the most part about this. And I mean, that's even kind of cool because normally we discuss all these things and kind of come into it sort of, you know, seeing eye to eye, but we may argue.
We may argue, but I think a lot of it too, once we dive into the 14 stuff is, you know, we talk about all these individual jobs, and you have always been somebody who's played a variety of jobs in 14, if not all of them. And I've only ever played one primary job and then maybe dabbled in like 2 to 3 others if I wasn't satisfied, and it never lasted long. So, you know, we'll kind of see. Oh my God. We'll see how this shakes out. But before we dive into 14, which is going to, you know, primarily take up most of this episode and probably the next couple of episodes, because we'll have the media tour embargo lifts on the 13th of October. So I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about that next episode. And then, you know, shortly thereafter, Endwalker is going to be releasing. So there might be some heavy 14 content coming for these next couple of episodes.
Yeah, and we will do our best to stay away from any sort of like main story quest spoiler type thing. That's not really, I think, what our idea of discussion is. It's going to be more of like the mechanical side and, you know, big changes overall to how the game works, rather than I can't believe this story plot point, because I know we have some listeners that haven't finished the main story quest. So we're going to do our best to steer away from spoilers, other than maybe after we finish it, we're just going to be like, oh my God. So, but this will be main story quest spoiler free, just as a disclaimer.
But before we dive into 14, another thing happened while we've been away, as the Tokyo Game Show. And, you know, while it wasn't, you know, there was a lot of people hoping we were going to get like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 or Final Fantasy 16. You know, we didn't get those things, and that's fine.
Wah, wah.
It's not fine. But
no, it's not. I wanted it,
but it was expected.
I'm crying.
We did get some information. We got the Final Fantasy Origins Strangers of Paradise. They released another demo and announced the release date, which is March of next year? I forget the actual date.
March 22nd?
That sounds right. March 22nd. I think that was right.
March 18th.
Oh, wow. Okay. We were close. We were in the ballpark. March 18th. Yeah. It looked like in the trailer that they released, because they also released a trailer, that the graphics were better. I saw some side-by-side comparisons people were doing, and it did seem like graphics were better than when we first saw it at, what was it, E3?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's a good positive thing. I'm sure they're going to continue polishing it up. But as far as gameplay and all of that, I have not played it yet. You've recommended I try it out because they have apparently difficulty settings on this demo.
They do, yes.
And, for listeners who aren't aware, Feyer is totally down on incredibly punishing games and platinum them, like, the Souls game and such. I am not that type of player, nor do I enjoy those types of games per se. But Feyer, you played the initial demo and you played this new one.
Yes.
Talk to us about how you feel about it. All of that juicy good.
Okay, so I talked about it in a previous episode, but the first demo, I was not a fan. I liked the core idea and what they were going for, but I was not impressed with the overall product. And so I didn't even finish it. Now, I almost didn't even download the second demo because of how disappointed I was in the first one, but I figured, you know what the heck? I wanted to give it a try, especially after seeing that super cringy scene on Twitter where, what's the main character, Jack or whatever the main character's name is? The girl's like saying chaos isn't real. And he's just like bull bleep. And then he like picks up his phone and turns it on and starts playing like some new metal music and like turns around and walks away. And I was like, what is this video game? That's it. I'm going to go download it. And like, I kind of thought that scene was, edited by somebody to just make a joke, but that scene actually does exist in it. And the game is cringe, but it knows it is, and it embraces it. Like they are self-aware of the cringe levels within it and they're embracing it. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's dumb, but you love it because it's dumb, because the game knows it's dumb. So honestly, I'm really excited for the story now because, it feels like they're really diving into the memes that came out with this of like chaos, this, chaos, that, darkness. Like they leaned really hard into the jokes that came out of the first trailer and the first demo, and they're amping it up to like 11, and it's incredible. Now on the mechanical side and graphical side, the graphics definitely looked better. However, there was some serious frame rate issues, and mind you, this is a PS5 game and I'm playing it on my PS5, and I swear there was times I was getting like 15 to 20 frames a second, which is not acceptable.
Now, is it a PS5 exclusive, or is it one of those like it's going to be on the PS4, PS5, and all these other different consoles? It is on PS5, 4, Xbox Series XS, Xbox One, and PC. Okay.
But even then, PS4 and Xbox One, you still have a baseline of 30 FPS. And
I'm not saying it's excusable for it to run at that because it's releasing on all of them. I was just curious, like, does it run that bad and it's a PS5 exclusive? Like, ooh.
Oh, yeah. No, I see what you're saying. And I think now this is also, keep in mind, this is the beta. So like, obviously this isn't the final release. Like it's coming out next week. They still have 5 months until this game comes out. And, that stuff they can still fix in the meantime, especially since this second demo also had another survey for everybody for feedback, which I'm really loving the way, Square Enix is releasing, their kind of non-mainline games and then having a survey for feedback. I'm really in love with this cycle.
Didn't they do that same thing with Project Triangle?
Yes, Project Triangle Strategy did it. The Bravely Default games did it. Octopath Traveler did it. And granted, these are games that are made by studios outside of Square Enix, but that Square Enix is like, here, use our brand, so to speak, to make video games. Because like Stranger of Paradise is made by Team Ninja, and Team Ninja did like Nioh, and I'm pretty sure they're like the Ninja Gaiden people. Like they did like Dead or Alive, Ninja Gaiden, some Metroid games. They did the Dissidia games. Okay, I didn't know that. They are the Dissidia people. Well, anyways, so like graphical wise, it's stuff they can fix because like some of the character models were kind of bland looking, like, and I was like, this kind of reminds me of PS3 days. But again, this is a beta. I'm gonna wait until they finish tweaking it all to really give my full opinion on how this game actually looks, especially because like Nioh and Nioh 2 are gorgeous. And then mechanical wise, they fixed a lot of the issues in the beginning, which was like your character felt sluggish, even though the combat was meant to be fast paced. And I think a lot of that was fixed. And there is some things that I don't like where like you're casting magic and like when you go to select which magic you want to cast, it's with your left stick, but you're also trying to move with your left stick, so you might cast the wrong magic, and like they want you to be stationary while you cast it, and I don't think that quite jives well with the fast-paced movement that the game requires you to have in order to not get hit in combat. So I'm hoping to see some changes there, but overall, like after playing this demo and beating it and then beating the extra area that they added into the second demo, I'm buying this game day one. I really enjoy it, and I'm really excited to see where they take this game.
And it looks like they added an area from Final Fantasy 13. Isn't that correct?
So it's not the actual area from 13, but there is like the background music does sound eerily similar to the Sunleth Waterscape track in 13, I believe what it is, but it is not actually an area from Final Fantasy 13. This is a unique area to this game.
Okay. So aside from Strangers of Paradise, we also got an updated trailer and some more info about The First Soldier, which is one of the mobile games that is coming out for Final Fantasy VII. It takes place like 30 years before Final Fantasy VII and is like the introduction of the soldier program. So there's some juicy lore in there. And while it's a PUBG style video game,
Battle Royale.
Thank you. While it's a Battle Royale type video game, and probably one I will not play, I will absolutely devour all of the lore research that people will do about this game. People were already throwing up stills from the trailer and little images showing Hojo, and you see Lucretia in there. I think there's like people had a little clip and they think it's Professor, what is it, Hollander? Is that his name? Hollander?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
People are already wildly speculating like, oh, are we going to see Vincent in his Turk outfit like back when he was a Turk? Because that would line up timeline wise. And we get to see like things in this trailer where Hojo is shooting somebody and it looks kind of like a degraded recording. And, people are speculating like maybe that's like a snippet of what to expect when we find, like in the original, you go to Icicle Inn and you find Professor Gast's records in videotapes and recordings, and people are speculating like, oh, maybe that could be part of this. Who knows ultimately, but it is an interesting place in the compilation timeline wise where this is taking place, and there could be a lot of very good lore in there.
Yeah, there could. And while I'm really looking forward to that giant lore dump, I'm sad that it's locked behind a battle royale game, because I am not one that's like, I'm in the same boat as you, Tyler. That's just not my thing. But what's cool about it, and also Strangers of Paradise, because now we have a Final Fantasy Battle Royale game. Now we have a Final Fantasy like Dark Souls inspired, Neo inspired game. This is kind of opening up Square Enix into other genres within the Final Fantasy brand. So now that means maybe my dream of a Final Fantasy Lego game can come true, which I want desperately, and I'll pay $200 for. I don't even care. I'll pay $200 for an hour-long game. I just want a Final Fantasy Lego game, or like a Dynasty Warriors Final Fantasy game. What are those called? Like Muso games or whatever. My point is like the fact that they're branching out into these other genres, even if it's ones that I don't care about and I really don't want to play, I think it just opens up the possibility that we might see games in other genres.
So what you're saying is we need to get Mr. Enix on the phone, yes, and have him get in bed with Lego, however Lego identifies, Mr. or Mrs. Lego.
Somebody call up Mr. Enix. Get him out here. That's it. He's our next interview. When are you giving us a Lego Final Fantasy game?
That's the only question we have prepared.
Dude, like I've played a lot of Lego games and their humor that's my thing. I love the Lego humor, the way they take these serious scenes and like make them ridiculous. I just want to see Lego Sephiroth like descending from the heavens and like poke Lego Aerith in the back and she just falls into pieces. And it's, like they don't have any voice acting. It's just all like grunts and noises. Oh my God, I would literally cry from laughing so hard. I just want to see these serious Final Fantasy scenes in the Lego humor format. Oh my gosh.
It sounds like we just need to build our own custom minifigs and do like stop motion recording of the game. That's going to be our Patreon stretch goal a year from now. We'll just make Final Fantasy VII out of Legos.
I actually tweeted out, I was looking for 3D printer recommendations because I was just going to make my own, but nobody responded, which just shows that I don't have enough followers on Twitter.
It shows that not enough people want this. They want it, but they don't know it yet. We've got to break it.
I know that's what it is. People don't realize it's something they want till they hear it. The people that I have talked to about it, they're like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I'm like, I know, right? But you never thought about it. And I'm like, now you did. Now let's be vocal about it. And anyways, tangents.
It's what we do. So the last thing to come out of the Tokyo Game Show was an interview with Yoshi P, director of Final Fantasy XIV and producer of Final Fantasy XVI, and Hironobu Sakaguchi, which is like the godfather of Final Fantasy.
Yep.
And they had a little interview, and there was a lot of fun stuff in there. I think at one point, Hironobu Sakaguchi was asking Yoshi to let him do side quests, to do a side quest in 16, and have him write one. But we had some juicy bits and updates that came out of 16, or out of Yoshi about 16. Feyer, fill us in.
Okay, so where do I even start? So Yoshi came out and he said the main story quest of 16 is done, but they are still working on finalizing the remaining side quests that are going to appear in the game. Now, he may have just said that now because he wants Sakaguchi to throw in his side quest, but who knows? So side quests are not done. Main story quest is done. The character models are almost finished, and then there's only a few quality improvements that are left to be done on the game as a whole. So just kind of like, they're going to come back and polish the game up here towards the end. And honestly, I have a feeling we're going to see this game probably re-announced with a release date in like December, and then see a mid to late 2022 release. What are your thoughts?
So I know that I know they like to do events, but here in the last couple of years, they've really pushed the Sony State of Play, and we know that 16 is going to be exclusive, or at least a timed exclusive for Sony. So that leads me to believe that we're going to get some sort of State of Play. I don't know if that will be during Christmas or in December, but I imagine here soon, at the end of this year, early next year, we will 100% get a State of Play and a release date. Because if the game is as done as Yoshi is talking about it being done, a release cannot be too far off. This isn't a case of, here's a trailer and we're not going to get the game for another 5 years. We're getting pretty, steady updates. And Yoshi, even when it was first announced, joked about showing something too soon and knowing how everybody responds to seeing a trailer for a Final Fantasy game and go, oh, well, it's probably not going to be out for another, however many years. Like he was in tune with that and was aware of it. So
I love that, man. I
really think we're going to get a 2022 release date for 16. Not sure when. I don't know if it'll be summer or fall, not even going to speculate there, but I think, summer or fall is a good window. Fall, we'll get it really close to that holiday season, depending on where it falls. We'll see. But I expect the State of Play focused on 16 relatively quickly in the next, 5 to 6 months, and a game release within the next year, probably.
Yeah, and I don't remember when this was said, but I remember Square Enix. It might have been Yoshi P again. He said they didn't want to show anything more of the game until they could give us a more definitive release date. So basically, they're going to show us a bunch of information and give us a release date, and then the release would be shortly thereafter, so that it's not. So we don't have those same feelings of, oh, it's been 5 years, it's been 10 years, So I think maybe even showing that initial one might have been a little too early, but hearing this little snippet from the TGS interview, it does sound like this game is progressing very well, and they're not hitting any of those usual Square Enix hangups of, oh, we're starting it all from scratch, oh, and we're having conflict of interests or whatever. We're disagreeing with the director, so we fired him and brought in Tabata, and that's how it happened at 15. And so it definitely sounds like this game is much better. It's way more on track, and we're not going to see any major delays, if any at all. And honestly, I just want to give Yoshi P a hug, man. That dude's so in tune with his fans, and he understands how we feel all the time, waiting on this stuff, and his transparency. And I feel like he would be even more transparent if Mr. Enix would let him.
I agree with you. I mean, even just with our many years of playing 14, his transparency within that game has been phenomenal. So I love it. I love to see it in 16. And I don't know if 16 was announced. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it was announced too early. Maybe it was. It sure as heck wasn't for a Final Fantasy. I think if anything, us getting that trailer comparatively to a release date will probably be one of the quickest turnarounds for a mainline Final Fantasy title in a long time.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But there may have even been pressure for them to get that trailer out early, because it was the first thing that was showcased for the PlayStation experience, where they announced the price point and when the PS5 would go on sale. They opened with that trailer. They know that Final Fantasy 16 and that game looking the way it did and being dark and violent and creative business unit 3, they knew that game would move consoles with confidence. And that's why they opened with it. So I'm sure there was pressure for them to do it then.
For sure. Of course. Everybody knows Final Fantasy games sell consoles. It's such a massive franchise. There's so many dedicated fans.
But one of the other things that was talked about was the skill tree. There's going to be a skill tree.
Oh, that's right. I made a video about this and I already forgot about it. So the skill tree, yeah. Geez, I don't have the quote pulled up in front of me, but basically, Yoshi P was talking about how there's going to be like a progressive skill tree within the game, and the team was inspired by Sakaguchi's game Fantasian, and with his company Mistwalker made it, which was and that game released on the Apple Arcade. And he said that 16's skill tree is inspired by that, and like he wants each skill to feel impactful, and that I'm not sure what that means, because technically anything on a skill tree would be impactful, except for like maybe like Final Fantasy X, where you go pick up a node and it's +1 strength or something. That's not impactful immediately, but over the game, all of those, you get 50 +1 strength nodes, that's impactful. So it's a little vague on the wording, but if you played Fantasian, you'll know that skill tree within that game is what is inspiring this one.
So the impression I got about the way he worded the skill tree is that, and granted, I don't play anywhere near enough video games, but I think
this
about
is a video game podcast.
I know. I think about games like even the Spider-Man games, that Insomniac did, and there's skill trees, like you get points when you level and stuff like that, and you can allocate them. And I don't recall if you can get every single skill in the skill tree. Like, I don't know if there's enough skill points, like even if you hit max level, I'm not 100% sure. But when you're navigating through it and it's tiered, you have these things where it's like, oh, it will buff this or buff that, or, you'll be able to unlock this or that. And so you have that, it's that choice of, as you're playing through the game and you're like, oh, this play style speaks to me and I want to enhance these things. You have that choice to kind of build out your character the way you want with a certain profile. And maybe with this being Final Fantasy, by the end of it, you'll be able to unlock everything, but at least in the beginning, you'll be able to tail it for, however long until you get to that whole quote unquote end game grind. You'll be able to, customize out your character with a play style that really speaks to you and what you're comfortable with. So that's kind of was my takeaway. And that's what I hope anyway happens.
Yeah. Like there's so many different skill trees out there, and I could go on and on and on what I want and the perfect one. But all I really have to say is I just hope that it's deep, and like there's just something really there to sink your teeth into, rather than you feel like you're on rails within the skill tree. Like there's a set path, and it's like, oh, get 10 more AP to unlock the next one. And like, that's your only, it's a road rather than branching paths. I really want something deep to where everybody could kind of create something a little bit different. And, you all get to the same place, but you get to that same place different ways, just so that, like subsequent playthroughs will have a little more flavor as you try different builds and things like that. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that would be nice. And one of the things that jumped out to me in that, like, we're getting these updates and we're talking about skill trees, and the one thing I keep thinking in the back of my head is like, I really think that we may end up with this game and we only play as like the one character. Like I'm thinking we might not have a party.
I kind of hope, like, it's weird. I'm kind of torn on it. I want it to be solo, because on one end that's never happened in the mainline Final Fantasy, and I think that'd be kind of interesting, especially if they're gonna, like if the stories, they make him like that tropey lone wolf type guy, or he was an outcast, or he was banished or whatever. Like maybe it's a story reason. But on the other hand, I really, really like in-depth, deep characters that that are just good, and I want to cry over.
Well, and I think that because we talked about how even with looking at Final Fantasy VII Remake, they had to do a party system in that game, but also wanted to go the route of making it an action RPG. And in doing that, they implemented a way for you to swap characters, but the other swap to play as a different character. But one, your AI ends up controlling the other characters, and that can be troublesome. Or, you have to juggle their ATB bar while you're also juggling yours. And that can be like tricky and difficult going in there and constantly essentially slowing combat down to shuffle through the menus and stuff like that. And one of your least favorite things about the combat was, in a turn-based setting, we get to control, quote unquote, every character in a turn-based setting. But like in an action RPG, you didn't enjoy swapping to your other characters. You just wanted to pick your one character the whole time. And so maybe Yoshi and the dev teams were aware of this difficulty that lies in creating an action combat RPG. And they were just like, you know what, looking at all of these, Western RPGs and stuff like that have been out, Witcher, all of these things that have been massively successful. Like, we're just going to give you this one character because that's the way gaming is going. And yet maybe we will have characters that kind of drop into the quote unquote party that will be kind of AI controlled to a degree, but like they just drop in periodically, not somebody we have consistently through. So we'll see. I think ultimately, go ahead.
So like a game that I recently played, probably way too late, was the God of War, the 2018 release. And, you play as Kratos, but you also had your son there with you. And I felt that like, I know Kratos was kind of training him and it was kind of story why, he wasn't doing as much in combat, but like as the game progressed, he was doing more and you had your square button, which kind of, he had a bow and arrow and you'd hit square and he'd shoot an arrow at whoever you were targeting. And like if an enemy was winding up to do an attack, you could shoot an arrow and it'd stun them. So it just kind of gave you like a little something extra while still having another party member. And honestly, like with the way Square makes their Final Fantasy mainline games is every new game, they're trying to do something different. So I don't think we're going to see something along the lines of Final Fantasy VII Remake. I don't think we're going to see, Final Fantasy 15. We're not going to see The Witcher. We're not going to see God of War. I think we're going to see something completely unique-ish to this game because, there's only so many different ways you can do it. So I'm not going to say it's going to be 100% unique, but I think it's definitely going to be unique to the Final Fantasy franchise.
Yeah. And really at the end of the day, the one thing that it's not even that I want a party, because one, that has been a staple in pretty much all Final Fantasy, but it's not that I want a party for combat mechanical purposes. What a party has always given you is that banter, like the main character interacting with all the other characters and there being story and exposition. And so if they deliver a wonderful story, which I don't want to say I doubt them at all. Like I have complete faith in Yoshi and the creative business unit because I've seen what they do with 14, but removing party characters kind of removes that aspect of storytelling and banter and dialogue and interactions. So as long as that's still there in some capacity and there's a gripping story and all of that, like I'll get over having controlling one character. It's just without contextual knowledge and knowing how the game is going to be. It's one of those like, things I think of.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Because for all we know, he could have some annoying little fairy follow him around like in The Legend of Zelda that he, mumbles to or something, or he's talking to his icon that he's controlling, like they're sentient and he has conversations. Who knows? And, if he's collecting them, maybe he talks to all of them. And like, there's no telling. And I'm not against anything yet because, I'm not going to pass judgment on any of these possibilities until after I've played it. Like, would I prefer a party? Absolutely. Am I against it being just a solo person? Not at all, because I don't know how they're going to implement it yet. It could be completely mind-blowing and be my new favorite way for them to do Final Fantasies. I don't know.
But moving past Tokyo Game Show, and we're going to kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of the episode. Final Fantasy 14, we had the live letter 66, I think was the number. And they dove into the combat details of...
Details light.
Details light. Like, for those unfamiliar and, listening who haven't really, either just started recently playing 14 or, haven't tracked 14 this closely. Basically, right around this time before an expansion releases, there's like a live letter where they kind of dive into the high level overview of changes to the combat system in general. And then they release like a job trailer where we get to see all the flashy actions for every job. And we get to dive into like high level overview changes to what they're doing for each individual job. Now, it's not tooltips and rotations and all of that. We do get to end up seeing tooltips because this is a live video and Yoshi P will hover over tooltips and people go in and screen cap things and it allows for speculation. But we got the first high level overview. And, in about a week from now, we'll get the NDA and the media tour will end and we get to hear all of the content creators who really got to dive in. And we're looking forward to that. But we are going to dive into the overall high level combat changes and dive into jobs individually and the roles, that type of thing, and talk about what we're excited about.
Actually, the day this episode comes out will be the day after the embargo lifts. So if you're listening, just remember we recorded this before it lifted.
Yes, that's the downside of podcasting, but we love it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of changes. And as far as like combat goes overall, I feel like the things that they changed were sort of like quality of life type things. Like, the DPS melee and casters had feint and addle, and they adjusted those to reduce physical and magical damage on both of them. Instead
of just magic or physical, like it's like you'll get to benefit of both of them.
Right. And so I think they even said they're keeping the foundation that they created in Shadowbringers combat with 5.0. Like they're not going to go back in time and bring back that bard who used cast bars in like Heaven's Ward, and only like 2 people in the whole world enjoyed that play style. So they're not rebuilding anything from the ground up. They're expanding upon the toolkits that already exist in Shadowbringers. So if you're playing now, then your job is still going to feel familiar, unless you're like a summoner or something.
Yeah, I was about to say, unless you're a summoner.
Yeah, okay, I guess that one is kind of getting rebuilt. But honestly, that one summoner needed to be rebuilt so bad, dude. It was such a mess.
We'll get there. One of the things that I'm excited about is the
summoner
change yes, summoner. Let's be real. We'll get there. I don't want to jump the shark too much. But the way that they're changing the cooldowns for like offensive abilities and buffs and stuff like that, and they're getting it all on a 60-second or 120-second timer. Now, this isn't for every single one. I think they made the example that like ley lines for Black Mage is still 90 seconds, but for the most part, they're trying to get every cooldown on this like 60-second or 120-second time frame, so that your cooldowns and rotations will more consistently align for burst phases and stuff. You can plan them out a little bit more smoothly within your individual job. But 2, when most jobs cooldown windows are 60 seconds to 120 seconds, as a raid or as a party or group, whatever, you can align your cooldowns as an entire group for raids, for progressions and stuff to, get through burst phases to align things. I think it's going to be really, really handy. I think that, I would never have thought that on a list of changes, I wouldn't have gone like, oh yes, we need this. But hearing that, I was like, that's great. This is why we love them.
Yeah, I actually think that this is one of the best changes that they've made because, and to use Summoner as an example, like the big thing about like a DPS job is while doing your rotation to make sure all your off global cooldown abilities are on cooldown. And, like Summoner, you were double and triple weaving things in there because they kind of came off cooldown at sort of an awkward time, but you also still needed to use it because it was off cooldown because you always should be pressing your buttons. And so by switching everything up to align with a 60, 120-second frame, you're going to get away from, that triple weave to make sure everything's on cooldown. You'll probably only have to single weave, maybe double weave something. I couldn't see us having to go further beyond that since now that they're fine tuning everything into this, 1 to 2 minute window. And, like for your more casual player, like if you're not into progressive rating or high end rating or any of that stuff, it's not really going to make too much of a difference, if really at all, except for like learning your rotation. Your rotation is going to last 1 to 2 minutes, and it's going to pretty much just going to restart. And like aligning burst phases and all that stuff, that really doesn't matter if you're just running main story quest dungeons and those random roulettes. So you're not going to feel the impact as much as the high end raiders who are looking for that invulnerability debuff from Ninja. The name is completely escaping my brain. Trick attack timing window. They all had to align all of their huge buffs and their burst damage phase into this trick attack window, but now they're not going to have to do that. As well, they are, but it's going to be easier because they all know, hey, at 60 seconds, this is when everyone's burst phase is, or at 90 seconds, this is when everyone's they're going to know. And it's just going to be so much easier to align everything. And hopefully definitely remove some of that double, triple weaving that some of the jobs had to do. And I think it's just going to make things feel a lot smoother overall and not feel like front end heavy, where you're popping everything all at the beginning and then you kind of don't have anything to do really until, until everything starts coming off cooldown again. So this is a great change.
I agree. I'm very excited for that. And I'm curious to see how it'll implement across all of the jobs. A couple of other things before we dive into like roles and actual jobs is that, and we knew this was happening, but they're removing belts. That will not be a slot in your armor anymore. You won't be able to equip them. They're going away.
Imagine that, then a Final Fantasy game with no belts.
Nomura is crying somewhere.
He is. He's sitting in the corner of his closet with like 100 belts around him, just crying into him, my belt. No.
And he's like using the belt to like wipe away the tears. But those slots in our armory inventory will then get put with, I think it was weapons and rings, which is fantastic. More inventory space is also great. But we'll just not have to worry about a belt anymore. That's tight. I'm not super upset about that.
It. Yep. Don't even care.
So, and then the other thing that they touched on was that apparently, and we're not going to spend too much time about this because I don't even know the fine details, but basically they had calculated magical damage and physical damage differently. And so to homogenize those calculations, basically we're going to see some potency adjustments on physical and ranged physical attacks and like weapon damage on the weapons themselves adjusted so that they're in line with magical weapons and magical damage. You won't, we'll see differences in the damage we're doing across the board because of the stat crunch, but the potency adjustments mixed with the recalculation of the physical damage for ranged and physical melee classes will not change or alter the damage you're doing outside of the stat crunch. It's just meant to homogenize the calculations between magical and physical damage. So, but that is something.
Yeah, because exactly. They calculate magic damage higher than physical, and they want to bring, I think the word was parity, up and bring physical calculated the same amount as magical. So there's a chance we may see the potency dip on physical attacks, but that just means each point of potency would be worth more. So don't be surprised if you see some potency dips on your abilities. They'll still be, equivalent to the same amount of damage, but each point of potency just is worth a little bit more. Now, they haven't specifically said that they're going to reduce potencies on physicals. We're just kind of assuming that. So we'll see. We don't have the tooltips yet.
All right. So let's dive in. We're going to start with tanks. And, Feyer is going to help guide this because he has played many of these jobs, if not all of them, where I am only familiar with a handful of them. As far as tanks go, I know a lot of tanks as I am a DPS exclusive player. I need to know a lot of tanks. I want to piggyback on those queue times. Let's be real. But Paladin is the only tank I'm really familiar with. I had a friend for a long time who played Paladin. And then since then, two friends and a friend and my mother-in-law, I should say, decided they were going to play Paladin. So I've been doing a lot of Paladin reading to understand that, to, communicate better with them. So that's it. That's Paladin's the only thing I'm familiar with. So, let's kind of dive in with tanks.
So overall, tanks and Shadowbringers were already in a really good spot. I really enjoyed tanking in Shadowbringers, and it was almost all I did. I shouldn't say very rarely. I'd say 70% of the time I was tanking because it was so enjoyable. They tweaked it so that it felt more like you were fighting the enemy rather than fighting your party for aggro as well as fighting an enemy. So tanking was in a good spot. And they didn't really break any of these tanks down and rebuild them or really change anything to them. They just kind of did a lot of quality of life stuff to the majority of them, like warriors buffs they can now apply to themselves through their AoE combo, or Gunbreaker got another cartridge slot and their hotbar bloat got reduced. Paladin, their magical combo got changed around a little bit, and then they got a new combo added, which is like these swords of revealing light shooting down from the sky, and it's probably one of the coolest attacks in the whole game. And they really did Paladin well. Really, the only tank that I'm kind of disappointed with is Dark Knight, because really they didn't get much. Like, they gave him a combo action for one of their Salted Earth AoE, and then gave their Shadow another attack, and that was kind of it. Dark Knight kind of got shafted, in my opinion. Dark Knight is already really strong, having the Blackest Night ability, which is ridiculously strong, but they started bringing up all these other tanks on to be on that same level almost and have like none of the drawbacks that Dark Knight has. Like Dark Knight's invulnerability skill is the worst, and Warrior and Gunbreaker's invulnerability skill went up from 8 seconds to 10 seconds, and Dark Knight's is still garbage. And Dark Knight got shafted a little bit. I'm hoping to see it get tweaked either before release or during 6.1 patch. So overall, tanks are in a good place. If you're a tank main, I think you're really, really going to enjoy Endwalker. It sounds like they just took everything they already had and just made it better. And I don't want to say easier, but like the quality of life was brought up a lot on tanks even more. So I think it's going to be a good time to be a tank.
And some of the other things that they've added to like across the board for all tanks is that it looks like they're really trying to emphasize where all tanks have a variety of defensive abilities that they can use. And they're rewarding using a defensive ability at the appropriate time. So I don't know what that's going to look like. Like maybe if you use an ability and you get hit at the right time within 4 seconds of it being up, you get an additional buff or some type of thing. But they are trying to emphasize that until we see, the media tour come back or some more in-depth like tooltips. It's kind of difficult to speculate what that's actually going to look like, but they are wanting to make it to where you as a tank are rewarded for using defensive cooldowns at the proper timing and not just like using them whenever.
Well, now that you bring that up, that actually reminds me. So like Dark Knight has the Blackest Night ability where you can cast it on yourself or a party member and it blocks like 25 or 30% of their total health. And if that shield pops, like you or your party member takes enough damage that 25% of your HP in damage, then it basically breaks off. That buff wears off and the Dark Knight gets a buff to use one of its MP abilities at no cost. So maybe they're trying to give other defensive cooldowns that same vibe where, like this absorbs 10% of your HP. And then if that 10% gets, used up off the shield, then you get healed for 100 potency cure or something. I just thought of that right now. So.
Yeah, maybe we'll see something like that. One of the other things they added is that each tank job is going to get a defensive buff, which they can either apply to themselves or another party member. So, kind of similar to the Blackest Night, like you were talking about, where they can apply it to themselves or a party member. It sounds like each tank is going to get some sort of defensive buff they can either put on themselves or someone else. And that will work whether they're main tanking or off tanking.
Most tanks already had, I'm pretty sure all of them already had an ability like that, but none of them were as good or are as good as the Blackest Night. So we'll see what the other tanks get.
One of the other things they're adding is that ranged abilities for melee or for tanks and melee DPS will no longer interrupt combos. So let's say you're doing your 1, 2, 3 combo as a paladin and you have to run out of an AoE, but you were on your 2 attack and 3 sitting there glowing and you want to put some damage on waiting for that AoE to go off. You can now shield blob and just put some damage on there from the back and it not interrupt your combo. Then you can get back into melee range and then finish out your combo. And I think, I don't know, did they remove Dragoon used to have an ability where like you could sit back and you could
it. It's called Piercing Talon.
Piercing Talon, there we go. So yeah, same thing with Dragoon. If you need to sit back and get out of range, but you want to put up some additional damage, you can do those things without them interrupting your combo, which is cool.
Yeah, and like I want to add this to another list of the things that I didn't ask for, but I'm really glad they gave us. Like I never would have thought that this was something to be changed. I never like considered it. Like it was always one of those annoying things, but not annoying enough for me to go Square Enix change this. But like I'm really glad they did that, especially for tanking.
So good stuff. Changes all around for all combat classes and not just tanks. As far as tanks go, Feyer, which of the tanks are you most excited to try first? Because I know you're going to try them all.
Yes. I know I was saying Dark Knight got the shaft, but I'm going to play Dark Knight first, most likely just because I have like this weird obsession right now with big giant swords that may change by the time Endwalker comes out and I may be in love with axes. I don't know. Right now I have an obsession with big swords. So probably Dark Knight, but Paladin's new Confiteor, however you say that word, their new combo with the Swords of Revealing Light is looking mighty juicy. And their Sheltron got upgraded to Holy Sheltron, and it's disgustingly amazing. And I think Paladin is just going to be incredible.
Yeah, Paladin looks great. Their defensive self-healing, healing tank type style with those Swords of Light are just amazing looking. If I were to play a tank, I'd probably start with Paladin or Gunbreaker, but that's just because Gunblades are cool.
Dude, if they would revert the sound effects for Gunbreaker's combos, I probably never would have stopped playing it. It's back in I think it was patch 5.1. They changed all the sound effects so now it sounds like a Gunbreaker's hitting a wet cardboard box, and it's just so bad that I don't even want to play Gunbreaker.
That's a bummer.
I'm so angry.
All right. So moving away from tanks, we're going to dip into the melee DPS now. So again, things we talked about still apply. Combo interruption with ranged attacks, physical, magical damage, all of those things. So we'll just dive right into the actual jobs themselves. So Dragoon, Feyer, you played a Dragoon for a long time.
I played a lot of Dragoon.
And even I did. Back in 2.0, when I wasn't super satisfied with Summoner, I mained Dragoon for a long time until Heaven's Ward. So I think I even leveled a Dragoon up through Heaven's Ward as
I think yours is 70 or 80. I'm pretty sure yours is pretty high.
It's 60 or 70. It's definitely not 80 though. But I've dabbled with Dragoon, and I'm kind of excited about Dragoon changes. The whole Blood of the Dragon is now a trait, because didn't you used to have to juggle that and keep that up and use certain moves like Gyroscogle and it would go down, and then you would have to build
it doesn't go down anymore by using abilities. It's on a timer now.
Okay, so it's just on a timer that you would have to keep up.
Yeah, it's a 30-second buff, and the skill is a 25-second recast. So you could effectively never let it drop off by just recasting it if you ever got close, which is why I feel like they turned it into a trait, because it was just ridiculous busy work, because it's not like the cooldown was longer than the time the buff was for. The cooldown was less. So why even have it as a button?
Yep, that makes sense.
The only thing that sucks is it's going to remove that sweet blue glow around your character with the dragons sort of going around you, since it'll be a trait. I'm assuming that's going to be gone. Hopefully they'll give another ability that effect, because that was super dope to look at.
Hopefully it just activates when you're in combat, because that would be lame. Those dragon skills were tight.
They were. And really my biggest disappointment with Dragoon overall, just as a job, is that all of the AoE abilities are line abilities. I absolutely cannot stand line AoE, because in some instances where monsters are so freaking huge and they don't stack because of their models, I spend way too long trying to get in the proper position to get them all within the line. I hate line AoEs. I like circles. Circles are nice and pretty and round, and there's no edges. I hate lines. And Dragoon's staying as a line AoE, so I probably won't be playing much Dragoon.
Well, speaking of AoE, it looks like they're expanding the AoE rotation for Dragoon, which is nice.
It was already Dragoons already have 4 or 5 AoE. They have a lot of AoE skills, not counting their jumps. They have a lot of AoE skills. So it's going to be interesting to get a 6th or 7th one, and then you add in their 2 jump. Dragoons are going to be AoE monsters. That's for sure.
That's good, because I feel like melee, maybe I just got too used to playing Summoner and being an actual AoE monster, but I always feel like melee jobs were kind of lacking in AoE, but that's based off of nothing. That's based off of just nothing.
I would say pre-Shadowbringers, you were absolutely right, but not in Shadowbringers. They really buffed a lot of melee AoE.
Oh, that's good. So talking about Monk, I leveled because I was convinced to level it because of the high DPS. But the more I played it, the more I was just I do not identify with Monk aesthetic at all. It's just never something I've identified with. So I can't speak to any of the Monk changes, really. So tell me a little bit about what you could glean from that, Feyer.
So I don't know too much about monks. I'm not a huge monk player, which is unfortunate, because I really do jive with the monk aesthetic. I'm a lazy player. Okay. I don't like positionals. I'm lazy. Sue me. But anyways, monks they're kind of turning monks into Sabin from FF6, and monks are getting a pretty heavy rework, the most reworked job out of all the melee, to where they're going to get Masterful Blitz. And basically, when you use Masterful Blitz, all your abilities become active, and depending on which abilities you use underneath it, depends on which finisher unlocks. And that's kind of like the combo input with Sabin or Sabin, however you say his name, in FF6. So that's kind of like it's even called Masterful Blitz. I'm pretty sure it was called Blitz in 6. But, that's just kind of like the vibe they're going for with Monk going forward. And like they took away their gap closer and replaced it with a better one to where you can target enemies or party members. And they removed a couple positionals from it. And, Grease Lightning, you don't have to stack Grease Lightning anymore. And they're really taking Monk in an interesting direction. So I'm kind of excited.
How many positionals did Monk have? Because I remember them having a lot, and they took away 2, and so True Strike, Twin Snake's positionals are gone. So how many would be left, roughly?
I think 4 to 6, and that I don't know exactly, but I think in the 4 to 6 area, which is still the most.
Still
out of
too
all
many.
Melee.
Still too many. That's a lot.
Still too many. Still too many.
So Samurai is a job that I actually did level to 80, thinking I would give that a try, and I actually don't remember it enough. But I am aware about the AoE changes that they are doing, and I am a big fan of the AoE change they're doing with Samurai. And for those who aren't familiar, Samurai had to get these buffs up with their weapon skills, but you would have to do it
target, right?
Yeah, single target. You'd have to do it through a single target rotation. But when you're trying to AoE things, you would have to stop AoEing, then go to single target to get your buffs back up. And now your AoE rotation will apply those buffs. So you can just keep AoEing and not have to swap to single target. I think they even did the same thing to Warriors.
Yep.
Which we didn't touch on. But that's a great change.
That is juicy. That is an excellent change. Because that is annoying.
Some of their abilities that they already have will be changed into charge actions, which in my opinion, charge actions, anytime you add like charges to something is great, because being able to like stack them and store them for something is awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I always really liked that about this game, how you had, a lot of your abilities had charges, and that's just so good. That's such a great idea. I love it.
Ninja. So I watched one of your videos, and you said that you didn't find Ninja to be a busy job. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think it is, but the devs claim it is,
which I find interesting. I do see what they mean with it being a busy job in the aspect of using the mudra. You have to use it accurately and not mess that up, because that is an important part of the rotation. I cannot tell you the number of times I bunny-eared myself screwing up mudra. And
I've even done it a bunch, and I played a lot of Ninja.
And so they're not adding a 4th mudra by the sounds of it. They decided to get rid of the dot that Ninja had, so you didn't have to worry about a dot timer and your other things. We'll touch more on removing dots later.
Yes.
But
I totally forgot.
The job trailer made Ninja look super sweet, like their electric abilities and stuff like that. I was like, oh man, Ninja looks kind of tight, actually.
Yeah, so like, they have their, they cast different elements with their jutsu, and it sounds like their sounds and looks. And they said it. I don't know why I'm like speculating on this. They said that they are adding actions that are going to be linked to Raiton, Doton, and Huton. And like Raiton is lightning, Doton is earth-based, and Huton is wind-based. And in the job action trailer, we saw the ninja like freaking throwing lightning bolts everywhere, and it was crazy. So obviously that's going to be like some action that gets comboed off using Raiton. And I'm assuming we're going to see an earth-based and a wind-based attacks as well. So that's going to be super dope. Like Ninja is on my radar again. I love Ninja. I love the aesthetic of Ninja, the total vibe. I like using Mudra. I also play with a 24 button MMO mouse, so I have all my stuff keybound to my thumb. So maybe that's why I don't find it busy. But I'm really excited. I think Ninja is going to be one of the first melees that I level up, and I don't even care that they removed Shadowfang Dot, because that right there, I think, is the only thing that made the job feel busy, was maintaining this dot that it was like a two action 7 combo to put it. It was dumb. I'm glad that's gone. Get rid of that. That's garbage.
I'm excited for you to try Ninja too, because then you can just put trick attack up on things.
You selfish son of a bee.
And then moving on to the new job that was added, Reaper, which they went over a lot in the video, and I can't even remember all the things that they went over in the video. But Reaper, the basis of it is that they're going to accumulate. They have gauges, shocker, and they will accumulate their soul gauge when they use weapon skills, which is their combos. And when the gauge reaches a certain level, they'll be able to consume it to execute attacks alongside the avatar, which they will then accumulate shroud gauge. So they'll build up a gauge, release it, then accumulate a second gauge. And then when the shroud gauge is consumed, the Reaper will serve as their avatar's vessel and unleash a special combo. The job's going to have one synergy buff, but it's going to lean more towards being like a pure DPS. So kind of like Samurai. They don't have a lot of party utility, just like one group buff synergy type thing, which that's fine. I'm all about pure DPS jobs. So Reaper is still looking super cool. And very excited, and still, as of right now, going to be the second combat job I level. But we'll get to the first one here in a little bit. So, physical ranged DPS. I have not played any of these outside of leveling Bard / Archer once upon a time when you had to level them for cross skills.
Oh wow! So A Realm Reborn, that's old.
Yeah, like I was, what was it? Raging Strikes. I had to get Archer to level 27 to get Raging Strikes for like all the range jobs.
You're taking me. That was when you had to, like, if you wanted to be Paladin, you had to level up Gladiator 30 and then Conjurer to 15.
Yep.
Yeah, call back to those Final Fantasy 11 days.
But so let's talk about physical ranged DPS. That's our Bard, our Machinist, our Dancer. How much have you dabbled into those, Feyer? Hit some high notes for us.
I would say a decent amount. I really enjoy physical range DPS. I love mobility in a job, which means no cast bars. And that's basically physical range DPS in a nutshell. Super high mobility at range, which is beautiful. Like, you can just be running all over the place, dodging all the mechanics, because I'm slow and I'm old, so my reaction's slow. So I've played a decent amount of physical range DPS. Bard, I think Bard actually was a busier job than Ninja, but it sounds like they're definitely leaning into the utility with Bard as far as like buffing up your party. Like your songs are going to make new actions available that applies party-wide enhancements. Your Apex arrows are going to get extended combo. Wanderer's Minuet and Battle Voice are getting adjusted. Their cooldowns to align better. And overall, like, you're going to bring a Bard in when you want to make all your other DPS better.
Yeah, that's kind of been Bard's shtick for a long time. Yeah. And it sounds like people really wanted more party-wide enhancements and more songs, and that was like a big thing people wanted. So it looks like they're adding in a whole new party-wide enhancement or song, which is going to increase based off of the use of 3 other songs. I don't know how that will shake out.
Yeah, that's kind of how their songs work now, where, like, it's RNG effect as you get the procs to make the song you're playing better. And now it sounds like if you do your rotation correctly by going through your 3 songs, the next song, the 4th new song is going to be better because you played the previous 3. And it's going to be interesting. I'm excited. My Bard's already level 80. It is one of my level 80 jobs, and we're going to see where it goes. I'm excited.
And it sounds like they're considering making it to where their songs will actually affect the Bard themselves. Yes, they haven't reached a decision, it looks like, but they are. That's right. They are considering.
Yeah, because I think currently none of the songs affect the Bard. It's just the party. And right now they're debating on whether or not it's going to affect, or right now they have it where it buffs the Bard, but they haven't decided if that's going to be final, which I think they should give the Bard the buff, because if I'm bringing all this utility to my party, I should get it too.
Yeah, no,
I don't want to be at the bottom of the DPS every time.
And as far as Machinist goes, it looks like there's not a lot of details on Machinist here, but it looks like they're continuing that direction with Machinist of kind of like the Edgar of Final Fantasy VI with his like tool stuff. They're adding in the chainsaw, which is very iconic from Edgar. Yep. And aside from that, I think they've got a new action that the Automaton Queen is going to be able to use. And really, they're just kind of like, that's kind of it. The rest of the changes they said will be new actions, but they want to keep that concept of things being playable without taking up too much hotbar space is going to be important. And that's really the only, new details we got over Machinist, which, it's fine. I don't play Machinist, but I loved the change. I think they did it in Shadowbringers where you bust out like a bioblaster and a flamethrower and all of these cool techie things. Like, I think it's great. And adding in a chainsaw to it is just going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Machinist. I really, as a mechanic myself by trade, I really, vibe with the Machinist like aesthetic and, just what they're going for with it. Not to mention Mustadio from Final Fantasy Tactics is like one of my favorite characters from that game. And he's literally a machinist with a gun. Like this, that's where they got the inspiration for this originally, and then they kind of turned him into Edgar. But honestly, not much is changing with Machinist. I kind of would have liked to have seen more. I'm hoping that Machinists get more than what they've shown or they said, because right now it just kind of sounds like they're getting a shiny new button, and then their pet that they summon out every so often is getting a new action, which is kind of lame. They did the same thing to Dark Knight, where like, give me something, my character something new to do, not me issuing a different order. So I'm hoping to see some more changes with Machinist. Like it looks okay right now.
And then lastly, with the physical range, we have Dancer, and it sounds like, they've got a couple notes here for Dancer, but having never played it myself, I'm not sure how that will actually shake out. So Feyer, hit us with that.
Okay, so I've leveled Dancer. I think I'm up in the high 70s. Really the big like quality of life change is when you do your dance and all your single target weapon skills would change into your dance moves for you to execute. They're making it to where your single target and your AoE abilities are going to turn into the dance moves. And that way you have more options for which buttons are easier for you to press. And they specifically mentioned controller players. So like if you didn't have to swap between hotbars as much on the controller. It's a really great quality of life adjustment, where me being a keyboard and mouse player never had an issue, but I'm happy they're changing it for those people that were struggling with it and that found it annoying. They did say that Dancer's kind of being kept largely the same, and like the procs and RNG between single AoE target combos, those are going to be made a little bit more simple. And also that the Esprit or Esprit, I honestly have no idea how to say that word. The Esprit is going to be guaranteed. It's guaranteed that you're going to get it rather than it being RNG. So they're removing some of the RNG out of this job, which is good because literally this entire toolkit is RNG. But that's what makes it fun. Honestly, I think the RNG aspect of Dancer is awesome. I did not think I was going to enjoy Dancer, but right now, I think out of the current Shadowbringers build, Dancer might be my favorite physical ranged.
Very nice. And I love when you play Dancer because I get those sweet
buffs. Oh my God, I
forgot. So on to magical range DPS, which I'm excited about.
Here it is.
Here it is. So Black Mage, we're Summoner's the last one. So, we're going to wait a little. We're going to bury the lead here.
Would be.
Black Mage. Black Mage I am actually familiar with. I swapped to Black Mage in 2.0 before I went with Dragoon, and then I tried playing it in Shadowbringers, or was it Stormblood? One of those.
I'm pretty sure your Black Mage is 80.
Yeah, I think so. I kind of tried to get it in as to like my new caster for those big numbers. But every time I play Black Mage, I just could not get into the lack of mobility, especially in comparison to Summoner. They are night and day. But similar to Blood of the Dragon, Enochian is now a trait.
Beautiful.
We don't have to juggle it.
I don't even remember what it does. I know like nothing about Black Mage.
So Enochian was kind of similar to Dragoon in that like you couldn't cast your high level fire and blizzard spells if Enochian fell off. And so you'd have to juggle it and keep it going. But if you mistimed things or if the fight was going rough and it fell off, then you would be like locked out of some of your high level spells and you'd have to get it back up. So now it's a trait.
Dude, that was the reason I stopped playing Black Mage, and it's sitting at level 70 because I hated that. Oh, dude, I may pick that back up now that that's a trait. I totally forgot that was the ability that I hated.
Yep. Duration of Fire 3 and Thunder procs. So basically the procs that you would get for your Fire and your Thunder spells is going to be extended so that you can use them at a more appropriate time and not like interrupt a rotation to like get them in. And the AoE rotation is going to be have upgraded versions of Fire 2 and Blizzard 2. So we'll have some upgraded AoE actions there. And they're going to give Sharp Cast, which essentially, if I recall correctly, it lets you get like an insta-proc, like a guaranteed proc.
Yeah,
Using
I think so.
is going to have 2 charges and a recast time of 30 seconds, making it a little bit easier to use, and you can store up those charges. We like those.
Oh yeah. So I do remember them saying something here in the live letter. They said that they wanted to take Black Mage obviously beyond the current Final Fantasy brand of like what are we at, like 4, or Firaga or Fire 4 or what have you. Like that was kind of the limit in all of these games. And Yoshi P said that he went to the Final Fantasy brand manager to get permission to create a brand new tier of magic. And the brand manager blessed Yoshi P, said, "We trust you. Go ahead. You got this. We believe in you and what you're doing with the franchise or the game."
Love to see it.
Right? Oh, God, I love Yoshi P. I want to hug that man so bad. Anyways, we are going to be seeing for the first time ever a whole brand new tier of magic. Now, no idea if we'll ever see this in another Final Fantasy, but if another Final Fantasy decides to go into a higher tier, they'll most likely be pulling this because this will be the new level of magic. This is super exciting. This is crazy. Final Fantasy 14 is changing the brand. That is in a great way. This is awesome.
Yep, that is good stuff. And it's good to hear they trust Yoshi P that well.
Oh, yeah. I trust that man with my life.
Haven't even met him. Trust him with my life.
He's just such a good director. Like, he's everything I want in a game director as a fan and a content creator.
Yes, I 100% agree. So moving past Black Mage, we're into Red Mage. Red Mage is really going to kind of keep going with that whole, what's the word? Supportive magic-based class. They're kind of like this interesting in-between. And they kind of rely heavier on their support. They're going to get a whole new defensive party-wide enhancement called Magic Barrier. One other thing.
Barrier.
Another thing that they're going to get is, I think, their final part of their combos, like their big Verflare, Verholy, or whatever, is going to be an AoE, is getting turned into an AoE, something to that effect.
I'm so excited. My Red Mage is at 80. I play Red Mage for Verflare and Verholy. Finishing your combo out and casting one of those is like a straight shot of dopamine into my brain. It is so satisfying to see Verflare and Verholy. Like, you feel that impact. And it was only on the single target rotation, and like your AoE rotation was just kind of boring. Like, I didn't really enjoy AoEing as a Red Mage. But now the fact that they're going to be part of the AoE rotation, oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, and it looks like they're adding in, they're changing up some things with the cost of like the enchanted combos and how much mana they require, so that you can fit a full combo in with Manification, which will allow you to do your opening burst much earlier. I don't play Red Mage much, so I don't know how this full details will shake out. But they're adjusting some cooldowns, recasts for Embolden, that sort of thing. So Red Mage is getting some smoothing, it sounds.
Basically, with that adjustment to your how much mana you need to do that, it just means we're going to see more Verflare and Verholy, which is always a good thing.
Yes, that is a wonderful thing.
Oh my God.
All right. And then the last magical caster, Summoner.
This one's going to be all you. I know nothing. I'm leaving it up to you.
It's just funny that, they told us we were only getting 2 new jobs, and, then they showcased Summoner, and I didn't realize we were getting a third.
Yeah. Wow. This one's different. This is different.
Yeah. And so I'm really biased because Summoner is my bread and butter. It's the one I'm excited for. It's what I've mained for the most part of all of 14, but I don't want to hijack it. I want to do high level overview, but I just have to say that, we had an idea through a couple of interviews where Yoshi and the dev teams weren't super satisfied with Summoner. And there's been a lot of rumblings of how difficult the rotation was, because Summoner had a very long rotation with so many different phases, and you have to do certain things with certain phases, and each part of the rotation coming down was affected by the previous phases that you did. So it was like anything going wrong in the earlier part of the rotation affected it way downstream. And it was very, very challenging, especially for new players trying to get into Summoner. We knew changes were coming. We got that job trailer. I don't know about you, Feyer, but I had no idea that that's what we were going to get with Summoner. Like them dropping Garuda, Titan, Ifrit, and summoning them, or quote.
I think it was always it was in the back of my mind as a wish. That's what I always wanted to see Summoner as, but I never, thought it was going to happen, especially 4 expansions in. I figured it would have happened already.
Yep. So going to hit the high notes of Summoner here again, because I don't want to sit too long on it. They're removing dots completely from Summoner. And yeah, other jobs have dots, and Summoner had 2, and I don't know how many Bard has, but Summoner had 2 dots, and that
Summoner
was like
had 2?
Yep. They
I
used to have
had
way
like
more.
5.
They had 5 on like a Realm Reborn days, but they've slowly consolidated that.
Wow, it's been a long time since I've done Summoner.
So 2 dots, but no more dots, and no more. The abilities involved around the dots are gone. So that's less button bloat. We won't have the dots we have to hard cast. I think Try Disaster is now our AoE ability, when it used to be a cooldown ability where it would apply our dots instantly. Bane is going to be gone because we won't have to Bane the dots and spread them to enemies. And Fester is just going to deal flat damage as an OG off the global cooldown. So dots are gone. And in simplifying the rotation, we're keeping Demi Bahamut and we're keeping Demi Phoenix, but we won't have Dreadworm Trance anymore. They're consolidating Dreadworm Trance with Demi Bahamut, so like they're combined, so you don't have like a trance to unlock Bahamut to unlock Phoenix. So basically what the rotation is going to kind of look like is you will summon Bahamut, have your abilities with Bahamut, and then it will unlock these Ruby Ifrit, Topaz Titan, and Emerald Garuda. So like these gems unlock on your job gauge, and you can summon those primals down in any order. It doesn't matter. Ooh. And they each have different abilities. Like Garuda has like a Doton like ground-based dot that she can put down. Titan has a lot of like cast and instant cast, so he's going to be good for mobility by the sounds of it. Garuda's got some instant cast, but then Ifrit has high potency like long cast that like you charge in and almost melee with Ifrit with like your claws and stuff like that. Kind of almost like 16, that just dawned on me, where it's got like the fire claws, and you like gap close rush into the enemy and melee, but they have like 2.8 second casts. So like you have to know the fight and plan like, okay, which summon am I going to bust out during these phases to do damage? And you have that adaptability to go, okay, I'm going to do this then because I've got long cast times here with high potency, or I want to be mobile with OGCDs, etc. You get that flexibility based off of what you're summoning. And then once you summon those 3, Phoenix unlocks. You bust out Phoenix, then you can summon the other 3 primals again. Then it's Bahamut. So it's just like almost like a 1-2 thing where it's like Bahamut, primals, Phoenix, primals, Bahamut, primals, and you just go through that rhythm. And Bahamut and Phoenix now work very similarly to each other, and they auto attack on their own. You don't have to worry about you being the one having to cast, because God forbid if you summon them during a movement phase fight right now and you had to move around, they did not do their auto attack. They just followed you and didn't do anything. And now they'll auto attack all by themselves. It's great.
Well, then it definitely sounds like Summoner is something I even had mentioned after Live Letter that I'm very interested in, because this all sounds great. And I thought it was hilarious during the showcase where this summoner gap closed in and started meleeing. I was like, what the butt is this? But I'm stoked. Sense. Like, I'm excited for you. I'm excited for everybody. I'm excited for the game. It really sounds like they're bringing so many jobs just into such a well thought out state.
I agree. I think these summoner changes are great. I think all the changes are great, but as a summoner, to see it go a direction where I feel like, yes, I am a summoner now is just wonderful. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, seeing those big actual summons is like why summoners in the franchise are awesome. And you kind of didn't really get that feeling too much in 14.
I completely agree. So let's dive into the healers now, because our episode is actually going to be running a little long already.
Oh no.
So let's dive into these healers. So one of the big things that was coming with the new Sage healer that they implemented is now that they had 4 healers, they got to separate them to have pure healers, quote unquote. Because let's be real, they all heal, but they were going to have pure healers and have 2 of them, White Mage and Astrologian. And Astrologian didn't have to have that identity crisis where it had to juggle, being able to pure heal, but also barrier heal. And then now we have Scholar and Sage as our barrier healers. So we actually have categories, pure and barrier healers. I think even in the context of the game, they're separating it. And
yeah, oh yeah.
So that's great. I think they get to have better job identities within the healers, having an even number.
They're straight up basically turning the healing role into 2 roles. So like your duty finder and like an 8-man is going to try to fill a pure healing slot and a barrier healing slot. So you probably aren't going to see, you know, a white mage and an astrologian together in a duty finder group. So they're really trying to create 2 different identities within the healing community, which is awesome. I enjoy healing and I'm all for that.
So one of the big things they did with healers is that for their cast time for offensive spells for healers is now down to 1.5 seconds, which I didn't realize it wasn't. But like White Mage's Glare, because my partner plays White Mage, like that had a long cast time. I didn't realize that, but now all healer offensive spells are going to be, you know, standard 1.5 second cast.
Yeah, I think that's great because like the state of healing right now is you're almost only healing in your off global cooldown, especially with like White Mage. Like if you're hard casting a heal, it's, you know, something went wrong, especially in like a dungeon. If you're hard casting a heal at level 80 in a dungeon, somebody messed up something. Other than that, you could just off global cooldown and you're spamming Glare the whole time. But then with Glare taking up the full 2.5 seconds of the global cooldown, you'd be using your off global cooldown abilities and losing uptime on Glare. So now with all of it being a second and a half, you now can use Glare, use something while it's coming off cooldown, and then go right back into it. It's going to make healing great. And I feel like they're really reinforcing the fact that healers should be DPSing in the downtime. Everybody, DPS, please.
Make these runs faster.
Make these runs faster.
But White Mage specifically, it sounds like is going to be adjusted pretty straightforward. White Mage has been in a great place as far as pure healing for a long time.
Oh my God, White Mage is so much fun.
And they're adding in an upgraded version of Holy, which is tight, and Fluid Aura, which I think was their weird little knockback, is going to get removed, and Divine Benison, which is their shield, I think their only shield that they do, is going to have a charged action, so they'll be able to have 2 and stock them. So
juicy charges. Yeah, and they're getting some weird like flower thing that they like plant in the ground.
Yep.
And we assume it's going to do some heals or something, but
yeah, we saw it in the job trailer. It looks like a little lily of light. We'll see how that works out.
And like it reminded me, like it's taking me back to the World of Warcraft days.
Totems.
Where priests had Lightwell, and
Lightwell, yes.
Lightwell was this garbage talent that people never took because now granted Lightwell, you had to go and click on it to get the healing. And I doubt that that's how this is going to work in this game, but that's all it's reminding me of. And I don't like it.
I don't think they would do that.
No, I don't think so either, but I really hope that's not how this is. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be clickable, but I really don't like right now what it looks like it's going to be, where it's going to be something you sit down and it's stationary. That's just always so bad because like if you're in a huge raid and you place it somewhere and then all of a sudden the battle goes to the other side of the arena and now it's over there doing nothing unless it has like a massive range. I don't know. I'm not looking forward to that. I hope. Yeah,
we'll have to see like how long does it last? What's the range? Those are good and fair questions.
Fair questions.
Fair questions. Yeah. Oh, that was good. That was a good one. Damn. All right. Astrologian. It looks like that, as we kind of touched on, Astrologian will no longer have to juggle both barrier and regular healing. They get to just be a pure healer. I have never played Astrologian, so I don't really know how all of these things shake out. So Feyer, if you are familiar with Astrologian, enlighten us a little bit here.
Astrologian is a busy job. This is a busy job. And, you know, they had their 2 little sects, which are stances that you put one on and your heals, specific heals would have a regen effect. Then you put the other one on and the same heals would instead have a barrier effect. Well, now Astrologian is classified as a pure healer and it's being grouped in with White Mage. So you're only going to have those regen effects, which is cool. But you're still going to have your cards, your Yu-Gi-Oh cards. They're going to work a bit differently. It seems like they're changing the way some of your buffs work. And Astrologian's getting, I would say, a minor rework just because of the way they're changing healers. I don't really know too much how much it's changing because I don't have those details yet, but I feel like Astrologian's going to end up being pretty dope.
And one of the notes they have here under Astrologian that's worth mentioning is that all healer jobs are going to get an offensive spell that will be easy to use on enemies in dungeons, sort of like White Mage's Holy. So probably like an AoE ability.
Well, all 3 healers right now all have an AoE. I always thought that was kind of a weird statement. Like Astrologian has gravity, which is essentially the same thing as Holy without a stun.
Okay, so who knows how that will actually shake out? Maybe them saying Holy was a bad example, but it sounds like they're trying to homogenize the healers in their offensive capabilities in some aspects.
Yeah, it seems like what they're doing to healers, this expansion is what they did to tanks in Shadowbringers, which is make them more in line with each other. And you're not worried about which healer you got in this, duty finder, because they're all going to be able to, all the jobs are going to be able to perform just as well as the next one.
Agreed. And so now we're moving into the barrier healers. We have Scholar, which I will preface with a lot of people are unhappy with the Scholar changes. I think that the live letter did not spend enough time with Scholar and therefore made it look like Scholar's got nothing, which is kind of a bummer. We'll see what it actually, after the media tour, if it's actually as bad and doomsday as it really is or really seems. It sounds like adjustments are getting made to pet behavior, which I think is good. A lot of people complained about the fairy with Scholar. And one of the biggest changes is that they're going to have a new action where they essentially can, what does bards do where they can make everybody's runs like movement speed go up?
I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's peloton or whatever.
Okay, so basically Scholar will have the ability to increase the movement speed as if everyone in the party had sprint, but actually in combat, and be able to reduce damage taken at the same time, which I feel like is kind of cool, especially if they're going to go the route of having more movement based fights or getting out of big AoEs, being able to just turn that on and everybody have sprint movement speed and reduce damage taken. That's not a bad ability.
No, not at all. I think it's super cool. And it lines up with like the Scholar vibe of being that tactician type of deal. I think that fits this job flavor perfectly. And I think it's super cool.
I think it's great also. But they've also got a note here where it says all healer jobs are going to get a new powerful enhancement that will be usable on a single party member. So not quite sure what that is yet for Scholar or the other healers. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out. And our very last job that we're going to touch on before we wrap up the episode is Sage. Now, Sage is like the little Gundam healer with its little, whatever they're called.
Newliths.
I'm going to call them Gundam wings. And
done.
It sounds like they are a barrier healer. But one of the big characteristics they emphasized with this is that they will be capable of attacking an enemy and healing specific party members while attacking an enemy. So it kind of sounds like, they will essentially heal based off of their damage that they're doing in some fashion. And that they can change when using certain actions. If they change an ability, they can deal straight damage or damage over time. Like their actual damage abilities will change from pure damage to a dot. And maybe that will affect the healing where it's a pure heal or it's a heal over time. Don't know, but it sounds like there's a lot of flexibility in the Sage toolkit there. They're going to have resources that they can, expend to create barriers, that sort of thing. We don't really know how this is going to play. This is a very unique new type of play style they're adding in for 14 with Sage. So a lot of people are excited. It sounds like it's a very DPS oriented job as far as healing goes. The fact that you're dealing damage and healing at the same time, like that's gonna be
you get a gap closer.
Oh yeah, your Gundam Dash.
Yeah, it's called the Icarus.
Oh, that's a tight name.
And I'm pretty sure the tooltip, if it's the one I see on his hotbar, I'm pretty sure it's like a little person with wings. So
love it.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty excited for Sage. I didn't think I was going to like it, just because it's called Sage. This does not scream, like the vibe of this job does not scream Sage to me. So I was kind of put off by it. But after reading all of this stuff about it and watching the live letter demo, this might be the first healer I level. Like this just looks and sounds so interesting, and I'm totally here for it.
Yeah, if I were to do a healer, it would be Sage at this point.
Yeah, and like normally, like I don't even like barrier healing. Like I don't like healing as a Scholar, so I didn't think I was gonna want to play as another barrier healer because I'm a very reactive rather than proactive healer, which is why I jived with White Mage so much. But I'm going to be playing me some Sage. I think this might be my first healer and probably one of the first 3 jobs I level.
Ooh, nice. All right. Well, to close out the episode, let's just kind of piggybacking off of that comment. What are you, if you had to do a top, let's give you a top 5, let's be real. Top 5 jobs you're looking forward to playing in order for Endwalker?
Looking forward, just because of my current obsession, I'm gonna go Dark Knight as number 1, then probably Sage, followed by Reaper, and then Dancer, and then one of the main magical range DPSs. I don't know which one yet, but I guess that's one of each role.
Right, that works.
Okay, so for you, besides Summoner, what are your next 2?
Okay, yeah, I think top 3 is more appropriate for me. So obviously Summoner 1, Reaper number 2. I'm very excited about Reaper. I have, call me edgy, call me whatever, but like even in tabletop settings, I've always been like, oh, I want to make a scythe work. And like scythes never work because they're like terrible weapons comparatively as far as dice rolls go.
Right.
But I'm all about that scythe. And then
I agree.
Third is probably a toss up between Dragoon and giving Black Mage another try.
Interesting.
I'm worried Summoner will be less mobile than it is right now with all these changes. I think that getting used to Summoner will probably get me used to Black Mage's lack of mobility. So we'll see. Definitely Summoner and Reaper. If I like them, it will probably just stop there. I am not the type of person who levels multiple combat jobs. I will probably level those 2 and then be like, all right, Gatherers and Crafters, got to focus on those.
You guys don't worry. You can count on me because I'm going to level them all, because every 3 days I'm going to change. So
like every other episode, we'll check in to see what Feyer's main is and to see what he has leveled.
Every episode, not even every other. Every episode.
Let's just go with every episode.
We're gonna do an Endwalker recap at the beginning or the end. What are you playing What are you playing right now? Oh yeah, get ready.
That's gonna be great. I look forward to this. But aside from that, that is all fair. Tell everybody where they can check out your content.
All right, y'all. You can find me at Feyerbrand on pretty much every platform right now. I'm very active on Twitter. I'm getting pretty active on Instagram. My YouTube, I'm starting to put quite a bit of Final Fantasy 14 content out. I'm really trying to grow my YouTube. I'm really enjoying making that stuff. If you're on TikTok, I'm posting a lot of my funny stream clips on there. That's kind of really all I post. And then I'm currently streaming on Twitch, but there's a lot of controversy there. And I'm looking into other things on where I actually want to live stream. But right now you can find me on Twitch. I'm at Feyerbrand on everything.
And if you're enjoying the podcast, we have a website, magusbrothers.com, and we are on Twitter at Magus Brothers. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your families, tell your coworkers, and
tell your pet.
Tell your pet. Yeah. Have conversations about our podcast with your pet. We support this. And review us on your podcatcher platform of choice. And if you have the ability to, please review us on Apple iTunes, because those reviews help the algorithm a lot.
A lot.
But until next time, bye.
Bye.